Good morning, men and you ladies watching. I'm Jason Wilkinson, and this is Doing Man Stuff. I'm on my front porch. It's a nice, cool morning. I'm having a very manly cup of coffee, black coffee, the way God intended it. Of course, we are preparing to do the manliest of all endeavors, which is take my family to church. Families worshiping together. That is the core of who we are, and we're certainly excited about doing that today. But being that I had a few extra minutes, I wanted to talk to you about something that happened yesterday. Now, yesterday, of course, was October 31st, and that's the anniversary of a very significant event in church history. The posting of the 95 Theses on the door of Castle Church in Wittenberg by a man named Martin Luther. Now, Luther was a devout monk. He was a man of strong convictions, and he was very offended and troubled by the abuse of a practice that was really firmly established by his time, the selling and the buying of indulgences by the church. Now, the sale of indulgences, as I said, was not a new thing at this time, but it was being ferociously abused during this time. Now, Pope Leo X was the Pope at that time. He had a project in mind. He wanted to rebuild St. Peter's in Rome. And the original structure that was built by Constantine was dilapidated. It was in bad disrepair, could really not be used as a church any longer. So he wanted to rebuild it. It would be a masterful project, and he would get to put his stamp on it if he was the one that built it. Now, interestingly enough and funny enough, he is not the one that finished it, so he's not the one that got to put his stamp on it, so that's pretty funny. But during that time, there was also a practice called simony, where men would, for large sums of money, purchase appointments as bishops. So the Archbishop of Mainz had purchased his bishopric at great cost to himself. So he was very cash poor. And being very cash poor is not a good thing. So he had this idea that they could use the practice of selling and buying indulgences to raise money, which was very common for them to do. But it was done in a really unsavory fashion, to be perfectly honest. But he petitioned the Pope to allow the sale of indulgences in his region, and the Pope said, "Hey, I've got a project too. So you can sell indulgences in your area, and we will just split the profits." So they basically conspired together to sell indulgences and make some money, so that the Archbishop of Mainz could pay back his debt. The Pope could start construction on a new building in Rome, and that was going really well for them. They had what really amounts to carnival barkers out there selling indulgences and preaching fire and brimstone. And if you buy these indulgences, you can purchase shorter time in purgatory, or you can free your dead relatives from purgatory if you buy these indulgences. There was a real abuse of power. It was not a pretty thing, and Martin Luther just was not going to sit silently and let that happen without saying something about it. So he posted these 95 Theses on the door of Castle Church there in Wittenberg, and that also was not a new practice. That was a very common thing to do. That's kind of how they started conversations in those days. And that's really all Martin Luther wanted, was to have a conversation and discuss this topic and the abuse of the sale of indulgences during that time. So Martin Luther did not march up to the door of that church with a big throng behind him and in a dramatic fashion take a sledgehammer and nail these theses to the door with a huge nail. That's not what happened. He just simply went up to the door and he nailed the theses to the door, and then when people saw them, then the conversation would start, or so he hoped, because that's just how they did things back then. So the misconception is that he had revolution or Reformation in mind when he did that. He most certainly did not. That's not at all what he wanted. He was a Catholic monk, The, he was not intending to overthrow or reform the church at that time. That is something that grew out of it, because the subject matter was pretty near and dear to the Pope's heart at that time, because he needed money to build his magnificent structure that he could put his name on and leave his legacy. And the Archbishop had this really lucrative position, and he didn't want anything compromising that. So they couldn't have this guy. They couldn't have this guy posting things like this and challenging their authority, which he most certainly did. So that's really how the Reformation started, yes, but that was not the intent of Luther at that time. It was just something that organically grew out of an effort just to maintain the integrity of the church. To Luther had strong principles and beliefs about the way things were supposed to be done, and he saw something that tainted the integrity of the church at that time, which his church was the Catholic Church, by the way. And he wanted the integrity of the papacy. He wanted the integrity of the church itself to be maintained. And that was his entire intent in nailing the 95 Theses to the door of the castle church in Wittenberg. So I think it's important to understand things like that in church history, because if we don't understand the intent with which things were done, if we don't understand and remember what happened, then we're going to be led astray very, very easily. I think that's a principle that could be applied in several contexts in our day and age right now. But I thought I would discuss that with you guys. That's how the Reformation actually started, was just the response of Leo and the Archbishop of Mainz to the posting of these 95 Theses. It led to so many things. Martin Luther was branded a heretic. He was excommunicated. He was marked for death. Martin Luther's Reformation efforts didn't start until later, but it really took momentum a few years later, before Martin Luther's death in 1521. And Martin Luther, it was a sinner just like the rest of us. He ended his life as an angry anti-Semite, and he wasn't some beautiful beloved leader of his brand new Lutheran church. That was not even what he did. But don't lose sight of the history that our church has. Don't lose sight of the intent with which things were done. If you do, then you're gonna go down the road to heresy really, really quickly, and you're gonna forget the precious nature of history. History is critical for us. Our society right now is doing its dead level best to destroy history, to wipe clean the slate of history from evil and misdeeds, particularly in our country of America. They're trying to censor and wipe clean any mention of bad things that might have happened in our past, and it's a huge mistake, because if you have nothing to learn from, then you're going to make the mistakes again. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about that, the Reformation of the church, the Reformation movement that was in fact started by Luther, but it was entirely unintentional. Guys, if you like this video, if you like this coffee, if you have the same desire to perpetuate manliness that I do, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and I will see you on the next video.